As with any job, life at sea involves many routines. Day in, day out, we perform the same procedures over and over again. We stop thinking about them. We become complacent. Complacency kills. Safety procedures carried out without any thought, simply because we always do them, kill. This film will only take a few minutes to watch, but I'd like to ask you to remember it the next time you perform a risk assessment. Remember the reason why you're spending time doing it. It's not just because you always do it, it's because it has a purpose. Think about it. In the earlier films in this series, we looked at two different approaches to risk assessment. In the Hot Works film, we looked at a formal risk assessment procedure and how it can help prevent accidents when you're carrying out welding, cutting, grinding and so on board. We saw how a young man's life was tragically ended simply because no one stopped to think through the job properly. Nobody carried out a risk assessment, so the hazards and the risks went unnoticed, until it was too late. In the film on slips, trips and falls, we asked you to think about risk assessment as a continual process, something you do all day, every day. Also, you don't always need a pen or paper to do a risk assessment. All you need is your eyes and your experience. Stop and look at what you're about to do before you do it. In this film, we're going to follow a risk assessment through from start to finish. The exact procedure on your ship may vary from that illustrated, but the main principles remain. So let's see how we carry out a risk assessment.
Close entry into the number 12 water ballast tank and also the toolbox tool.
Yeah. We're continuing work on the fan we took out yesterday and supply dampers and filters on the starboard side. It's going inside, so you need to put a space on it. Yeah. Okay.
After smoke walk.
After smoke walk.
So, what's happened so far? As part of their regular daily routine, the officers met to discuss the day's activities. Following the meeting, the second engineer completed the risk assessment and permit to work for the job specified. Let's pause a moment and think about what a risk assessment is. A risk assessment is designed to give you the chance to think through the task, to consider the hazards, estimate the risks involved, and then to take steps to eliminate or control those risks. We've talked previously about the difference between the terms hazard and risk. To understand the process correctly, you need to be familiar with the terms. So let's briefly recap. A hazard is a source of danger or harm. If we're planning a confined space entry, for example, just one of the potential hazards is a lack of oxygen in the atmosphere inside the space. A risk is the likelihood that the hazard will occur, combined with the consequences of it happening. For the hazard of a lack of oxygen in a confined space, we would estimate that this is a very likely hazard with severe consequences. Our risk assessment would identify the hazard of a lack of oxygen, estimate its risk to be very high, and therefore we need to take steps to eliminate or contain the risk. For example, by ventilating the space or wearing suitable breathing equipment. Bearing all this in mind, let's go back to the second engineer. He's heading down to the workshop to run through the risk assessment with the crew member. This will include the discussion of the hot work permit that was issued as a control measure for this job.
This is the risk assessment we've done for this job. The risk assessment is hot work, welding, burning, grinding, etc. The hazards are to prepare the area, make sure there's no combustible materials, build-up of fumes, anything like that. Well, this is a medium risk, so we're okay to go ahead with that one. So if you want to have a look through the permits, and if you can sign that for us, if you're happy.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm happy with this.
Okay, if you'd like to sign that. Splendid.
Okay, so we've seen the second engineer thinking through the task. We've now seen the second engineer talking through the potential hazards and risks with the crew member who's undertaking the task. Everyone is now aware of the hazards and risk control measures the job involves.
Right, Sandy, that's the job finished. Thanks very much for that. You've done a really good job. If you'd like to sign the permit off.
Yes.
Right, thank you.
From start to finish, this job was carefully considered. The risk assessment identified the hazards of the work, the risk associated with these hazards, and allowed the crew to put in place measures to eliminate or control the risks. Thanks to the time spent on the risk assessment, the work was completed successfully and, more importantly, safely. You've now seen the procedure from beginning to end and seen how important a risk assessment is in the process. Risk assessments save lives. It's that simple. A lack of care and attention can result in serious consequences, which can lead to injury or loss of life.